Hello, it's Dr. Eric Potter, Functional MD, once again for a Facebook Live. So the downside is I lied to you. This was going to be about traveling with mold toxicity and how to be safe on the road, but I think it was a good lie, so I hope you'll forgive me the fact that we have a special guest, Captain Darren J. Vigil. He is with Healthy Exposures Incorporated. He is here to talk about building science and how to make your home safe with science. We're going to spend time, instead of traveling with mold, which we will do later, so hopefully you will get a chance to ask those questions then. We're going to talk about something that anyone who is dealing with mold toxicity or environmental toxicity is having to face. How do they make a home that's safe for them or their loved ones, like their children? So we're going to spend the next hour just dialogue. Mostly I'm going to let Captain Darren do more of the speaking. I would like to give you a little introduction though, however. With that, Darren is a CIEC certified indoor air quality consultant, a building scientist. He's a founder of Healthy Exposure Incorporated and co-founder of Healthy Exposure Construction Incorporated. He's an airline pilot for a major airline provider that you would know. With that, just a little bit more of his background and CV, 20 years experience helping families with their homes, licensed general contractor, and he's from Minnesota, outside Minneapolis. Is where he is working with people there, but also he consults helping safe and healthy homes around the nation. Works at the Minnesota Department of Health Gold Standard Builder, that qualifications, EPA lead certified firm, member of BATC, IAQA, NRPP, ACAC, ASHRAE. If he feels necessary, I'll let him tell you what all that alphabet means. He's helped people across the United States and even internationally understand the relationship between their health and their homes. Worked with world leaders in environmental and functional medicine, particularly Dr. William Ray, who passed away last year, one of the pioneers in environmental health science on the clinical side, and also working with Dr. Ben Lynch, who has pioneered areas in methylation and MTHFR. So we are going to let Captain Darren tell a little bit about himself, and then I'm going to start asking him some questions. We do have a couple of questions that you audience has already sent in. I'm going to have Stephen, could you scoot the camera just to rotate it just a little bit towards Darren? Yep, a little bit more. Perfect, right there, just to get us in the center there. So, Darren, we've been friends for a while. Both of us kind of came to this from having health issues in either yourself or in my family, right. And we met at one of the methylation conferences, but it's been a wild ride for both of us over the last number of years. So I'm going to let you tell a little bit about your story, and then we'll get into some of the questions.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on your program, Dr. Potter. I still remember the day we met in 2016 at a conference, and we both have large families, so we had share that in common. We also, none of us have asked for what occurred to us in our lives. And just a background, I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, right down the road from you. Yep. Here, and I went to aviation school and got my degrees in aviation in Middle Tennessee, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, at Middle Tennessee State University. So this brings back great memories being here in Franklin with you. I started out just being tired, a little more tired, taking naps, and we thought that was normal. And then I was taking more naps. When crew members were going out to dinner, I was going to bed. And then it just started progressing and got worse and worse, and started feeling aches and pains, just generally not feeling well at all, inflammation, pains everywhere, and not realizing that, being an airline pilot, we bought our first home, started getting ill there in that home. We thought we were getting better and bought a new home. And that's where I snowballed. And very fortunate that eventually, after doctor after doctor after doctor, I found my way to Dallas, Texas, and I went to see Dr. William Ray. And he was the first doctor to look me in the eyes and says, "I think I can help you." And he puts you in a controlled environment. And this is when I started understanding in what I now call environmental health construction. I don't know what we called it then, other than less toxic construction. And of course, that's how I became a building scientist as well. Understanding the relationship between our health and our home, the food we eat, the water we drink, and the air we breathe. And the air we breathe is our home and our workplace, our schools, and everywhere we are. And I'm down in Texas, and they're talking about construction. And I previously worked in construction before I was a pilot. I used to build homes so I could fly one day, and now I fly so I can build homes. And I realized it was a different kind of construction. Mm-hmm. And that's where now I do call it environmental health construction, and I base it on building science. And I made my mistakes in the early days, understanding and trying to learn. And I tell people I'm now smart because I used to not be so smart. And a trial and error. And there was no Darren or healthy exposure around in those days. Dr. Ray was my teacher. The way he designed his clinic and the way he recommended home construction. And then I'm just one of those people that really enjoyed learning. And I did it for myself first. And I wasn't flying, didn't expect to be productive again in society. And I made it 7 years with no more sick calls until I had a back surgery. And that's another story. And that's how we met.
Yes. Yes. Well, I am thrilled to have Darren here with us today, and many of you who are patients have heard me mention him before as my Minnesota friend who is able to help sort out some of those toxicity questions in their house and their construction. So some of you have already benefited from giving him a call or looking at his website. But before we get into the questions, I didn't clear this necessarily with Darren ahead of time, but just the fact that I kind of look at him as I'm a doctor for the body. Darren's a little bit of a doctor for the house. Right. He can help you diagnose your current house and determine what might be causing some illness symptoms like he's described he went through. And also you might be a little bit of an obstetrician for houses in that you're helping birth healthy houses from the beginning, so right. that you're not going back to the old houses, the geriatric houses, where you're trying to determine, okay, what are all these chemicals, what are all these toxins that's making someone sick, which is hard to do. Certain buildings are hard to remediate, harder than others, but also what he and I share another excitement is just the fact of looking forward to helping patients build healthy houses from the beginning. If you go into the starting process of building a house, it's a whole lot easier if you do things right from the beginning. If that's some common wisdom, but definitely applies when you're doing building houses. So with that, I will house Dr. Darren. Captain Darren is going to answer some questions. So he's already talked about a little bit what got him into this in the first place. But let's talk about what are some common problems with building materials and finishing construction that we see, and as these houses are going up everywhere. What are the problems when you come at it from your viewpoint?
Right, that's an excellent question. I call this building a flight plan for a healthier home, and it does take planning. And most builders are not trained in building science, and our current code does not always agree with current known building science. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us are starting, there's a green movement, which we're just thrilled to see, but you have to apply it with building science. If you take recycled treated lumber from the older days, that has arsenic in it. It may be green to recycle and use that again, but it's toxic. Same with lead. You would not want to put, frankly, barn wood looks wonderful, but if you don't want lead in your home, please do not put barn wood inside your home. But you can simulate barn wood. You can make it look like old barn wood that's pure. So, yes. But a lot of us are becoming familiar with materials of homes, like using green certified flooring and zero VOC paints. The areas that they're not as familiar with are cabinets, are a big source of pollution. The off-gas, volatile organic compounds, and formaldehyde, and now there is even formaldehyde mimics. So they might alter the chemistry a little bit and say there's not something in it, but there still might be something that's not good for you. OSB, the sheathing on homes, traps moisture. Well, we all know that mold likes moisture. Yes. Also likes food. Yes. As the wood is the food source, and that can trap moisture. We want our walls to breathe in both directions. We
Right.
want to keep the water out, but we also want, if water got in, the water to be able to dry out. But carefully picking materials from the start is a very important piece and journey to building a healthier home. But unfortunately, it's not the only
Right.
piece.
Yeah, so that brings up just thinking about some of the mistakes. We've had the barnwood furniture made out of old barnwood that looks awesome.
Right.
The exposures using some chemicals, and this is something that it's been a process that we've had to learn what is safe, and also at the same time is it's hard to go in and start from throw away everything and start completely over, but you have to start somewhere.
Right.
So that is what Darren and I have a lot of conversations about as he's helped us in our new home, and when we've been in older homes, just to how to make it as safe as possible. And not that you can do everything at once, but you can stage that in. But let's also talk about just some of the other things that contribute to chemicals. So cleaning, laundry, personal care, lawn products. There's a lot of, you hear a lot of things and you don't know what to believe and what not to. And sometimes many of our patients, it's easier just to say, let's stick our head in the sand and just ignore it all. But tell us a little bit about some of the other things besides just building science that can enter your home.
Well, when I began, I had no idea. We talked a little bit about this before the program, where our journey was going to lead us to, and you really have to be. I tell people again, I'm now smarter because I used to not be so smart, and we all have made mistakes. And
Yes.
I look back at old pictures and I say, I cannot believe I did that to my children or my pets.
Yes.
And I look back. So even chemicals in your lawn. If you walk through your lawn and come in the home, you're going to bring the chemicals into your home.
Yep.
If you have a crawl space or a basement and you chronically treat your lawn for chemicals and extermination for termites, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the program, but our homes have weather patterns in them, and the lower levels tend to have a lower pressure. Mm-hmm. And a lower pressure is like sucking on a straw, and you can pull these chemical gases into your home. So it's not just, well, I don't use pesticides inside my home. These pesticides get pulled in through a negative pressure that your home creates. Yes. And the gases of the chemicals, and nature produces chemicals also. So yes. We want to design all these things to try to prevent it. So I encourage everyone, fragrance-free laundry products, personal care products, not only fragrance-free, trying to go vegetable-based. If you read a label and you cannot pronounce something on the label, maybe you shouldn't rub it. And you being a yes. medical doctor could probably tell people how quick chemicals go into every organ of the yes. body when you rub it on your skin.
We use a lot of medications like hormones, other things you can put on your skin and get systemic levels. So of course, what we put on from makeup or cosmetics or spraying on for good smells is going to get into our bloodstream as well.
Absolutely. If you walk through the perfume department at the department store in the mall, all those chemicals that you're smelling, and some people think that stuff smells good. I personally don't believe that it smells good. Those chemicals go in your blood in all your organs within about, I believe it's 30 seconds.
It's pretty quick.
Pretty quick. It's pretty quick. So just be very careful about things that you purchase. Try to stay away from gimmicks. Truly read the label. Dr. Potter would be a person that could help you there too on your journey in selecting better products in your home. And
these days, Darren had mentioned earlier, when he was first sick, there weren't a lot of resources out there.
Right.
We can be thankful that because there is more recognition that these are real issues. There are different apps you can get on your phone, your iPhone, your smartphone. They can help from looking at cosmetic choices, looking at the Dirty Dozen versus Clean 15 as far as food choices. There's several ones out there. Looking at those, and then you can be sitting in a store and say, okay, this has ingredients that are off the list, they say the no-no list.
Right.
And as he mentioned, just like high fructose corn syrup has 1,000 aliases. It has got more, it's more than a KGB agent as far as how many different disguises it has named on product labels. And a lot of things like in building science is similar too, because once people start recognizing that you don't want to use this product, all of a sudden the name changes so they can still use it. So there's a lot of, as I said, the house doctor and the person doctor, there's a lot of overlap.
Yes.
It's an ongoing battle, but I'm glad that there's an expert on his side of the fence, so I can focus on caring for patients and he can he and others out in the field can work on caring for the houses that impact on my patient's health. So another question then, thinking about kind of some other things we do in the house is cooking. So is it true that we should not cook with gas if we're concerned about off-gassing of the gas grills?
Right. So we just talked about off-gassing of building materials
Yep.
in the home, and a lot of us choose not to smoke.
Yep.
Right. Sniff glue.
Yep.
But what do? We build a home and we're smoking volatile organic compounds, formaldehyde, and other off-gassing chemicals. There's very little difference. Then we want a fireplace, and that's the same as secondhand smoke, and we know how bad secondhand smoke is.
Yes.
And just to touch on some of the products, go back just a little bit, we're now starting to see Roundup glyphosate in the news.
Yep.
About the harmful effects there, and baby powder, talcum.
Yes.
And when we do air samples, we find talcum in the air that people are breathing every day, every moment. And these particles are so fine and small, they can get into your bloodstream and also plug up in your lungs. And
yes.
And if you plug your lungs up, how does that help your oxygen and transfer into the blood?
It seems endless.
It's endless. So cooking with gas produces a lot of byproducts. First of all, when you first ignite a gas oven and or stove, you have raw gas that dispenses into the air before it ignites. So now we're starting this combustion process. So now we have actually raw gas that we can detect in the air when you light a gas grill. And when I'm talking about cooking with gas, we're talking also about your grill in the backyard. Also, at least the grill in the backyard is better ventilated than the grill inside your home. But a lot of byproducts. So everyone's familiar with carbon monoxide. That's a byproduct. Now, if your burner's burning clean, you're going to have a minimal amount of carbon monoxide. But another byproduct is formaldehyde. People don't realize when you're cooking with gas, you're producing more formaldehyde, and it doesn't take but 40 parts per billion to trigger a asthma attack in a child. That's not a lot.
No.
Another thing is nitrogen dioxide. We don't hear a lot about that. We're starting to hear a little bit about it now because the government measures this in the air. It's also a byproduct of driving your car. It's also a byproduct of cooking in your house. And nitrogen dioxide is more toxic than carbon monoxide. Other things are also volatile organic compounds, fine particulates. By the way, cooking with electric, you're going to produce fine particulates also, and some volatiles as well. Just in the general nature of cooking, I encourage people to cook at very low temperatures. The lower the temperatures, the less volatiles you'll produce.
And something that we've also talked about besides just how you cook, also making sure you have good ventilation, which we can talk more, but just you're controlling the environment where you're doing your body, your daily activities of life, because they obviously have to cook, or we can cook lower temperatures or eat more raw-based foods, but there are some things we need to cook, and it's finding the right way to do it and the environment that you control and set up to be safe.
I'm going to personally enjoy a good grass-fed burger on my electric grill is what we cook with. And yes, ventilation is important. You want to have a very good exhaust vent system over your stove and your oven. Ovens also gas into the home, and if you're cooking with gas, those gases also go into your food if it's the oven. And you want your vent hood to vent outside, and you want one with enough power to actually vent the fumes outside. Some of these microwave vent hoods aren't very powerful and don't do much to help your air quality.
So I want to take just a moment just to say that I said this kind of earlier, we have to take all this in baby steps.
Yes.
You're not going to be able to change everything, and you don't necessarily need to be afraid that you need to move out in the backyard with a tent, unless some people do that because they are having acute symptoms where they are very sick. So sometimes that is necessary, or moving into some type of temporary living if their house is making them sick. But even if you aren't experiencing symptoms, you want to prevent. You also, especially if you're children who are going to be many more years than you are right now of experiencing exposures, especially as we are living in more toxic environments, is start taking a step at a time. You may not be able to do all these things, but if you take one step, pick out something this month or something this year that you're going to do different to make yourself safer, healthier home, do that. And then next year you take next month and the next year you're taking more steps. So
build that flight plan, right?
Yes, the flight plan.
Right.
You don't get, it's nice when you have the no stops, direct flights, but many times you do have to do 3, 4, 5 stops to get somewhere, especially when you have a long way to go. If you're going international flights, you're going to have a few stops. And think of it like that, is that you are one step at a time until you get to that place where, yeah, you're having a safer home for you and your family. So let's move over to another thing that goes into our body, is thinking about filtered drinking water. Why should we consider some filtration systems, and how can we avoid some of the plastics, the different chemicals that come in our drinking water?
Right. A lot of people, and maybe we can post some pictures later,
yeah,
of what you don't want your kidneys to do.
Yes.
Our body's kidneys are our filters. And we want these filters to last a very long time. And one way to help your organs last longer is not to put fine particulate and chemicals into your body. And we talked about food, air, and water. Water is so important. There's a lot of things that are just carried through the transportation mechanisms of the utility company and their plumbing systems. You get a lot of metals and other rust and fine particulates that you don't want to be consuming. The others are chemicals, I mean, even Roundup now is vaporizing into the atmosphere and getting into our water tables, and so that's something that you probably don't want to consume.
Definitely not.
Yeah, and then chlorine and chloramine, and listen to this, ammonia. Municipalities also inject ammonia in certain water systems. Not something I think that you want to ingest. They do it to sanitize the plumbing.
Right.
But we don't need to sanitize our blood.
Right.
So maybe it's great, but you want to definitely remove it. Here's something that people don't realize, and this is why I highly recommend whole house water filtration systems. These chemicals, they gas, they vaporize into the air from your toilets and your sinks and your tubs. And we talked about walking through the perfume department, right? How quick, and
right.
You'll have to let us all know later how fast those chemicals get in all the organs. It's no different with these off-gassing chemicals. I took a shower here in Nashville, Tennessee, really nice hotel, and man, could I smell the chlorine.
Yeah.
I could smell the chlorine, and I know that chlorine is going into me. And when I'm at home, I don't want to do that. You know, you're going to take what I call hits. Don't be afraid to take a shower.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a shower before I'm going to be on your program. But you want to minimize your exposures as best you can. I tell people, don't walk in fear. Be aware. And build that flight plan to take steps to minimize these exposures. But that's one thing people don't realize. You're also inhaling the off-gassing of the chemicals that are in your water system in your homes.
Yeah, and I think it reminds me of one of the issues is talking about taking hits, that we need to take showers. We're going to drink water and eat food and cook our food, as I mentioned earlier. There's a simple fact that this is not about being afraid, as Darren mentioned, but knowing where our bodies are designed to be able to deal with a certain amount of toxins. And part of the issue, the reason I believe, and I think Darren agrees with me on this, is that we're seeing more environmentally related health illnesses, chronic illnesses, random symptoms that conventional medicine is not either recognizing or able to identify, as the fact that in the past we have a little bit of toxins, just a few number, but our society and its growth is increasing the number of, some would say there's over 80,000 chemicals released into the environment now from a synthetic man-produced form, but there's also the amounts of those. So maybe we could handle this much of these three, but now we have the studies that look at cord blood. Babies born who are just coming out of the mother's womb have tens, if not sometimes 100 chemicals already in their bodies that their mothers were exposed to. So it's a fact that we aren't going to 100%, even polar bears, out far in the Arctic away from anything else have been found to have plastics and different chemicals. Yes. However, if we minimize those from the health side of things, enable our bodies to detox as much and as healthy as possible, then when we have to take a shower at a hotel that has chlorine water, or you're passing through a building that has mold toxins, you're not immediately getting sick or staying sick for long periods. You know how to handle those. We help our patients with mold toxicity know, you might want to have some glutathione if you have to go into a friend or family member's house that has some mold there. You can take some glutathione to take the edge or help you recover faster. So this is about, one, the more knowledge you have, the more you can be aware, the more you can make lifestyle changes and make yourself healthier, and again, your children as well.
A great point. Practicing a healthy lifestyle, keeping your total body burden low, and that's Dr. William Ray's model. He has
Yes.
this barrel. Keep your barrel as low as possible. That way you can go out, and I call it taking a moonwalk. You go out a little bit longer, and those that are critically ill have to, be very cautious about
Yes.
that. But once you get your health under control and practice a healthy lifestyle, you can afford a
Yes.
few more exposures.
Yes.
Certainly can.
Yes. So speaking of exposures, which is kind of one of the things that Darren and I talking more about my family's health right now, is the exposures that we can have from crawl spaces, basements, slabs, some of the, as he said, our environment, organisms, our environment can make a lot of things that are not good for us. So
Yes.
let's talk a little bit about the kind of underneath our house world.
Right. So, homes are built because this is how we build them.
Yep.
And we don't build homes with health in mind. And frankly, the contractors are not trained to build homes with health in mind. They're built to build homes that meet the minimal bar code
As fast as they can.
as fast as they can. I'm more mission oriented versus money oriented. I want the mission to be successful. And but if you're building to the standard code levels, we're not taking health into accounts. So when you build a home, you start with a foundation. And even in nature, there are chemicals. You have microbes in the soil, and they produce a thing called microbial volatile organic compounds. And then as far as mold spores go, they produce in colonies. All you got to do is give them food and water and a dark place to live.
Like rabbits, they'll grow and multiply to no end.
They certainly will. And the thing is, Dr. Potter, nobody ever takes time to ask the question, why do these things happen? Why? And I happen to be one of the people. I ask why, and what can we do to prevent it? I still enjoy going to the lake and doing fun things and hiking and camping and doing all the fun things. I just want to do it a little smarter than I did before. So after tearing into lots of homes, and I don't even know how many, I started understanding how important and crucial the foundation is, whether it's a slab or a grade, a crawl space, or a basement.
Yeah.
We have these natural soil gases that are in the soil. Methane's one that's produced. Microbial volatile organic compounds is another. Extermination, pesticides in the ground are another, especially if you're exterminating for termites and bugs and so forth. And moisture. So a lot of us understand water in the liquid form. And in Minnesota, and that's where I've resided for the last 17 years, we understand water in the solid form, which is ice. Very few people understand vapor. Very few people understand vapor and the behaviors of vapor. And then the pressure changes. We have weather patterns in our homes. So the lower levels is going to create a lower negative pressure, which basically pools gases. And one common soil gas is radon that a lot of people are familiar with. And frankly, I'm disappointed if a radon test comes in negative, because people are very not aware of other soil gases that are also in the soil. And how you mitigate soil gases is, I call it a soil gas mitigation system, where they install radon systems. It's the same system.
Right.
We want to make a negative pressure underneath our slabs. Well, guess what else? If you have anything below grade, your wall, vapor and gases will travel through the wall as well, whether it's block or concrete. So that's where we have designed a system, and we're talking that you're probably going to be putting this in your home too. An entire wall and slab system that to back up a little bit, we eliminate, isolate, ventilate is the foundation that we follow. So we eliminate what we can eliminate, and then we isolate. And as far as the soil gases go, we're not going to change water vapor. We're not going to change nature, the microbes, the microbial volatile organic compounds. We're not going to change those things. So we have to learn how to manage those things. And that's where we have a ventilated wall system and a slab system. And we tie the soil gas mitigation system into that. It pulls these gases and controls the vapor. And you vent it. Right now, our chimneys, our house is our chimney right now, unless you have the system. If we capture it with ventilation systems, create a negative pressure underneath the home, and then vent those to the roof, now that pipe is the chimney, not your home. And you don't want to live in the chimney of all these gases.
No. And as Darren mentioned, this is we're working on this in our own house as far as the crawl space and staging things. Again, a step at a time,
Yes.
eliminating water issue, adding the layers in so we can ventilate. So we are in some form or fashion doing all those things, and then also,
Right.
as he and I have talked about several times, is working through that over the next year or so to get that system complete, so that my family is safe from the issues we've dealt with.
Building that flight plan.
Yes. We've also talked about our home's building envelope. So why should our exterior walls how should they be designed and built, and why is that important?
Well, a home should be a system. We should build our homes as a system, and it's hard to separate the crawl space and basement from the living space to the attic. There's these forces in a home. We talked a little bit about this negative pressure that develops in a lower level. But we have different wind effects. We have a naturally occurring stack effect where there's a force. It kind of looks like a thunderstorm. Air flows up. And if there's any water vapor in that air, it's going to find a cold surface, no matter where the cold surface is. So in the wintertime, especially in the cold climate areas, but it still gets cold here in Tennessee, that water vapor wants to find a cold surface. Everybody's seen a cold glass of iced tea, how it condensates.
Yep. Sweet tea here.
Sweet tea here in Tennessee. And I encourage you to find a substitute, though, for that sugar. I'm sure you can give your patients some advice on that.
Yep.
But that condensation can happen in your walls too. And what does it take to grow mold? Moisture, food source, and darkness.
Yes.
And that's exactly what a wall is. So we want to design a wall system that can dry out in either direction. Water will go through siding. It's going to find a way. And you can't stop the forces of water vapor seeking a cold surface. You cannot stop this. You try to do that with your iced tea. It's not going to happen. You can't keep that tea glass dry. It's just not going to happen. Your home, same thing. So we want to build a wall system that can handle water getting through your siding or your brick, that will stop it from flowing into your wall. So you want your wall cladding, that's what it's called, whether it's brick or siding or stucco, to have a drain plane that's vented at the top and bottom to allow airflow to flow up and down that system. And on the inside of the home, we don't want to put plastic in the walls, and that's very common in a lot of areas. I don't know that you guys do it here in Tennessee, but they put plastic poly behind the drywall, and that just traps moisture in the wall. Because water vapor is going to find a way in. You know, they put this plastic on the wall, and then they drill a bunch of holes in it with nails and screws, and water's going to get in, and when it gets in, it needs to be able to dry. So we want to design a wall envelope that dries.
Something I've heard you say is just we've talked about this many times, is the fact that the green movement we want to make, it's not a wrong thing to make your house energy efficient. It's not wrong. But if that energy efficient causes your home to not breathe, which is a good, just simple way of thinking about it, your house needs to breathe just like we need to breathe. And then we breathe whatever the air is trapped, the house is not able to breathe out, we're breathing it in. So we have to have houses that, yes, they're energy efficient, but we've got to balance that with making it health safe. If you have someone who's chemically sensitive, you may go into a house that, you're saving $1,000, $2,000 a year on energy bills, but you may be spending $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 or more on health bills just because you are breathing in, whether it's the VOCs, whether it's mold toxins, whether it's fill in the blank. So that is getting the houses to breathe in a way that balances those two is important. So we're working our way up in the houses. So let's talk a little bit about attics as well. Just about that, we talked about the stack effect, air going up, collecting there. What are concerns and things we can do in our attics that would make them healthier for the rest of the house?
Right, and you mentioned we want our homes to breathe. Of course, we don't want to breathe what's in our walls. So we want to build tight, but ventilate right, and that comes with HEPA filtered is what I prefer to find particulates. We want to filter out. We don't want to be breathing these things chronically. And we want our fresh air into the home. We want to induce it, but it's got to be filtered and conditioned air.
Right.
Okay, so our attics are no different than the basement. So the air flows out typically, but that's called stack effect. We can also have a thing called reverse stack effect. When the temperature changes, air can flow down. So that means whatever's in your attic comes through your light fixtures, your ceiling fans, and any little crevice or cracks that it can find, and then you're breathing attic air in your home. And I don't know the last time you've been in an attic. That's not something you want to breathe. And then if your furnace or air handler is in the attic, it's not airtight air handling system. It's going to pull air also from its surroundings, and it's going to pull that air from whatever surroundings it's in, whether it's in a crawl space, basement, or an attic. That air is going to get pulled into the ventilation system and distributed throughout the entire house. So we prefer a conditioned attic. We want a conditioned basement and a conditioned attic. That's how you control the stack effect, reverse stack effect, and the flow of water vapor. We want to condition these spaces, and then we want all of our envelope of the home to be able to breathe. Even the roof deck, we want it to have a breathing method where air can travel from the low to the high. But we want our attic air to be just as healthy as our home living environment.
The thing, it just again reminded me just that the flight plan, the triage, as I look at a patient, we're going to focus on the things that are more acute, that are causing more severe symptoms, and then we'll work to those things that are maybe medium or even minor at that time. So when you're going into your home, if you've got mold growing on a wall, that's where you need to focus your attention, and you can come back to some of these things later. Take care of the acute. You say, okay, what led to that happening? And you start taking a bite at a time off of that. It may be, oh, you need better ventilation. We're going to work on getting a little balanced or positive pressure, so we're blowing out instead of sucking air from our attic and crawl space. In our home, we're going to work on making it to where the air inside is clean. And Darren has told me, Captain Darren has told me many times, is make our attics and our crawl spaces eventually as clean an air as we have inside our living room and our bedrooms. So those are things that we are doing, and we are helping others, and Captain Darren is helping from the construction side. Right.
And the nice thing and the benefit there is you have the cleanest storage area for clean storage for your home. So
let's do, before we hit to some questions that the audience has sent in, just, we've kind of worked from the crawl space up to the attic now, and we've mentioned lawns, but let's go back to the lawns, just some of the things that you can look at. You and I have talked about different products at different places in the house, but what are some of the things that you can do to make your lawn safer?
Right. Well, the same thing. We don't, want to use chemicals, frankly, in our lawn. We want to try to use sustainable lawn care practices.
You mean those sprays that we see all our neighbors put on is not a good idea?
Not good, and it's hard for me to understand why the sign says that it's safe after 24 hours.
That means it's not safe at some point.
Yeah, right. I would hope that, but it accumulates in our soil. These chemicals accumulate in our soil, and a picture that haunts me to this day is our firstborn daughter and our dog Chelsea. And when I got sick, Chelsea didn't survive it. We were getting sick together. And I have a picture, and the last thing you want to be the winner of is the lawn of the month, unless it's the organic lawn or the natural lawn of the month. You don't want to be proud winner of the lawn of the month. So I have a picture of my daughter sitting with our dog Chelsea in our most beautiful green grass of our first home. And that's not a picture I'm very proud of. I'm just so grateful that Brittany's very healthy today, and that I changed my ways once I was forced to understand that I should. So I encourage people to make a relationship with their local sustainable lawn company. I'm not a big fan of any of the GMO products that some lawn companies use, like the corn gluten is a GMO. I'm pretty much don't want to put Roundup in my yard. But now they do have organic corn gluten, and there's other products, and we'll have some lawn products on our website that's coming out here soon too that we'll share with you later.
Which is one of the things you also need to know is Captain Darren's Healthy Exposures. They do a lot of testing, so they are working through finding those safe options. So for my family, it's been looking out there. Even though there's a lot more resources than there used to be, there's still a lot that we need to learn, and having those who are testing the products and helping us to determine what's safe and what's not, and not just depending on industry to make promises, oh, it's safe after 24 hours or so forth, and yet you have all these lawsuits coming out, say, against the glyphosate, that is just showing it's not. And we can't trust the big money in those areas. We need people like Captain Darren, who is doing the research, who is doing the comparisons and looking for safe options. And as we try to do, is help share with our patients what's worked with others, where others have found that they've been sensitive to things, is doing everything we can to make a person's environment as safe as possible. So let's take a few questions that we've gotten on here. So this is kind of just shooting from the hip and seeing what you have to say, and sure. I may add some in there, but so this idea is about getting your home clean enough that it's morally acceptable to sell it, surviving in it until you sell it. So I will say this is a common thing of patients. Right. They may try to remediate a few times and find, oh, we can't get the ERMI, the HERTSMI test low enough, or things seem better on all the tests, but I'm still sick in my home. There's a conscious level of others. Many of my patients, or if not almost all of them, don't want someone else to be sick.
Right.
But you and I have talked about, not everybody is that sensitive to mold. Many can have, their tolerance level is higher. So do you have others that you work with where they've been like, you know, I'm getting this good enough to sell, and helping people handle that ethically, emotionally?
It was great. But one thing I had to come to terms with for myself was we're in a smaller population group. Probably 15, maybe you may have better numbers, 15 to 30% of us
somewhere in there
live in the sensitive realm of our epigenetics.
Yes.
And it comes with your genetics and your exposures, of course. Mm-hmm. And so you have to almost look at what's standard in the industry. You know, I've seen people remediate mold, and they're going after mold, but they don't realize they just made themselves sicker from the construction dust.
Yes.
So we want to control all aspects. This is a surgical maneuver. You want to have the home clean to what's the acceptable level and the standard of the industry. Mm-hmm. You know, air samples would be acceptable, and surface samples would be acceptable. But it's what's standard in the industry. So the ERMI is taking another level, looking at the right. DNA, and even good cleaning with enzymes will help your ERMI test. Yeah. As well. So that's a great question. You've always wanted to disclose. I do maintain a real estate license in the state of Minnesota, and if you have an issue, you want to disclose. We also, if you have a health issue, you feel free to talk to your realtor about disclosing that I'm an environmentally sensitive person and that I require a hypoallergenic environment. Yes. Not everyone requires that. I had a car, drove me crazy, made me sick. Every time I got in, I didn't like the smell like coming out of the air conditioner. It bothered me. I tried to clean it. I couldn't clean it. Now I probably could with what I know today, yes. But back then I couldn't. So I sold it. Talked to my neighbor. He actually found out I wanted to sell it. He wanted it. I said, well, it makes me sick. I fully disclosed that he could care less. It didn't make him sick.
Yep.
It didn't bother him.
Yep.
So you want to just fully disclose, and then they're going to have a home inspection and disclose anything right. you want to do.
And to some degree, and I've said this to many of my patients, is if you're selling to someone who is chemically sensitive and you disclose, it's really their responsibility to make that decision. You can't, right. Oh, don't buy this house because we had, well, they've got to know. And you say, well, what if they don't know? We're not omniscient. We're not God.
Right.
We are going to do our best. We had a house that we sold that, looking back, we didn't realize how moldy it was, but we disclosed, and even the realtor was like, you have better records of what happened right. in your house, because we had a flood, we did renovations, we did so forth. She's like, you've got every receipt. And we literally said, here, it has a drain, it has this, it has a sump pump. We installed all these things. These are, who has all the warranties for all those. If you do that, you've done your part. And someone else has to be responsible for making a wise decision whether they buy your house or not.
Absolutely. You can sleep well. You want to just sleep well at night. Make sure you fully disclose.
So this is a longer question, so I'm going to take a moment just so this is one that we will share because I'm going to summarize it just a little bit from Lori. So post-remediation ERMI is 15, which if you don't know, that's higher than you really want to have. They had found some more mold after a remediation once in a flooring under a kitchen bathroom sink. With that, that's been gutted, cleaned, remodeled, sounds like has done, disposed, removed, cleaned, everything, and then fogged with some products that would clean afterwards. But looking at, and this is something that many of our patients deal with, is how far do you go in terms of upholstered furnishings, bedding, mattresses, books, refogging, doing different essential oil diffusing to try to knock that down. From the medical side is, you can look at the ERMI or look at other air sampling tests. If someone goes in and they're still sick in that you've either got to look for the mold, if it's mold toxicity was the original thing, or you can look for any bacterial endotoxins, actinomyces, look for other sources, the microbial VOCs that might be contributing. But then you've got all these, what you do with books. The way I describe it, and I'm going to let you kind of throw your side from the remediation side in there, is you have to at least think through all those things. If you've had something that's got visible mold, that's a different category than something you bought 2 weeks ago, brought into a moldy house, or especially if it's hard like a plastic or metal, is definitely different than, say, a book that you've had that got wet in a flood and smells funny. So everything you have to go through all your belongings and think about them. But when you're helping patients, your clients, remodel and recover, restore life after they're gone through removing a mess in their homes, how do you talk with them about some of their personal belongings that were in those homes?
Right. Well, it really helps for someone like myself to be in the home, because I've been in homes where they were advised to get rid of all their belongings, where they didn't have a flood. They didn't have these odors in the furnishings. Right. The furniture, in that case, just needed to be cleaned with the rest of the house. But remember, our home's a system. Eliminate, isolate, ventilate. So we have to eliminate sources. So in this, I'm just going to go back to this early customer many years ago. She had an open crawl space, and so we had to isolate that crawl space from the home and then ventilate it, kind of what we're talking about with your home, and then ventilate. We got to ventilate our homes. We have to bring in constant, fresh, filtered, conditioned air, and people forget the conditioned part. We don't want moisture, more water vapor coming in the house. We want to minimize that. As far as odors and books. If you see visible mold on something that can't be cleaned, it just cannot be cleaned. If there's odors, and unfortunately this happens helping somebody that works at a library, and this librarian is probably not going to be a librarian much longer, because there's nothing that she can do about all the books that have odors. But if you have personal books that you want to save, you need to isolate them into a sealed container. And frankly, if you have to go and use those books, make sure you're doing it outdoors under good ventilation. If there's something you just absolutely, and then don't be afraid to let go of some things. The bottom line is, if it makes you not feel well, if it has these mold gases, maybe not mold toxins, just the odors, kind of like smoke in your clothes. If you put on a shirt that's been in a smoky room, it's going to bother you. So try to clean it if you can. If you can't clean it, let it go. Or if it's something that you cherish and want to save, you better isolate it into a sealed container.
So that's kind of a similar approach then, of just, there are things you can clean, there are things you can't clean. It's going to be different for each person we see, and it's walking through that and helping people determine what's safe and what's not. We've got a family Bible that there'd be no way this thing is nasty, so we put it in plastic, we've stored it away. We'll never open it up around my family who has mold sensitivity, mold toxicity again, but we've kept that stored. Now, there's other things. We probably threw away 2/3 of our belongings. A lot of that, honestly, with my pack rat. Just need to get rid of some things. But there are some things we had to throw away that had some mold on it that we really would have rather not thrown away. Letters I wrote to my wife when we were dating, but they had gotten damage and mold on there, and we took digital pictures. We have that record, but we did have to get rid of some things. So it is walking through. And then another thing, there are those who, yes, have to go to that extreme of they're starting over, throwing away everything. There are, I'd say, many more who can clean their belongings. They get rid of some, they clean others, and they can be healthy again. So it's just walking through each. There's no one size fits all that always shudder when somebody is told, oh, you have to guarantee 100% get rid of everything or you're not going to get better. Yes, there's a few, but not everybody is in that situation. A few more questions. We still have a few minutes left. I think we're going to try to get 3 or 4 here. Sure. So just a question regarding whole house filters and plus or minus a fluoride filter is kind of as a specific thing that we will have in our water, fluoride that's been added to the water, much to our detriment. But how do you maybe even just touch on some of the things that you talk about need to be removed from water?
Right. Well, you have your fluoride. You have pharmaceuticals now that are in water. We have our chemicals that we actually put in water on purpose: chlorine, chloramine, ammonia, and in some areas fluoride. And there could be other Roundup showing up in our water systems, and I would think you're doing Roundup tests or glyphosate testing, and a lot of us are positive for this. So one, you want to minimize what you ingest, and then two, you can help your patients with the infrared sauna and sweating out out of their system. I have my favorite line. I'm pretty negative on plastics. Even my tea glass, it may not be the best, but it's a stainless steel container using filtered hot water for my tea. And I carry a travel filter with me. So I have my favorite line of filters that we can share with you later that do reduce the fluoride levels in the chlorine, chloramine, ammonia, pharmaceuticals, and all those sort of things in the water. And I'll try to share some pictures, before and after pictures with you. And if that doesn't convince you, I don't know what will.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then I think this is a good question for you to address. So how can we get our new house to breathe? We were required to comply with very strict building codes and had a mold issue as a result. So thank you, Amanda, for that. So just what do you do when you're kind of stuck with some building codes? Are there ways to still make your house breathe more?
Well, absolutely. And in fact, when we do your system, maybe we should feature that on a future Facebook Live program.
Yep.
Everything we do exceeds code. And we want a home to be built tight, but we have to ventilate it right. And so we have a design system that we're going to be applying to your home to where we can bring in continuous fresh filter conditioned air, but we can also dehumidify that air as well. And now your home's going to breathe. You can have good, clean, conditioned filter air in the home. You want to think of your home like a fish tank, fish aquarium. We buy the best things for our fish. We really do. We have beautiful fish aquariums and big, nice filters, carbon filters, and we pump air bubbles in. We don't put chemicals in the water. And we filter the chlorine and chloramine out of the water, or the fish will die. Mm-hmm. So we're very careful with our fish, and we even use healthy lights for our fish. So I apply all those same concepts to projects when I work in homes.
So Heather has a question. Make sure. I'm looking at a home apartment to rent. What sort of construction types of windows are you looking to avoid? Considering issues of breathability of the home and materials that are obviously more prone to promoting mold growth, she moved into a new home where we did use reclaimed barn wood. It's an open space, non-acclimatized room. We sealed the product with a marine grade sealer. Will the sealer product protect us from the actually, I think that's two different questions. That's 2 ones. All right. So for Heather, it's just about, are there certain things, say, if you're looking to rent, that you want to avoid, kind of warning signals that are easy without having to poke holes in the wall, I guess?
I'm going to put a selfish plug here. This is a very difficult problem. Back to homes and apartments and condos, in office buildings are not built for health. Yeah. They're not. I call it going from one frying pan to another frying pan. We have homeowners, and the term I use is homeless with a home. Yes. You're homeless with a home. Yes. Being homeless with a home is the most, it's just a terrifying place to be when you have a home that you can't live in. Yes. And you don't feel well in. Now, I couldn't live in my home. The first health exposure home before health exposure had a name was my own. And once I understood the building science of air quality in a home and how a home is built, I showed that I went 7 years, no more sick calls. Yeah. I don't get sick anymore. I work all the time. I travel all over, U.S., Canada, Mexico, and I still maintain a high level of energy. It's understanding your environment. But finding a healthy apartment, the best advice I can give is this. Who's this? Heather. The best advice I can give you, Heather, is try to find a LEED Green certified apartment. You're going to probably pay more for that. Just because it was built LEED Green certified doesn't mean it's 100% healthy for you. You'll probably still want air filters, water filters, and still need to let some fresh filtered air into that apartment. I have one particular customer that's on her third place and finally moved back home with a mother. It was one frying pan to another, from her home that she sold to then an apartment to another one to another one, and they all have issues. New homes have new home problems, and whether it's a building or apartment or a home, and old homes have old home issues, and that's where you want to be really mindful. So here's the plug. Our construction law firm has discovered us, and there's a huge need for all the environmental medicine doctors around the country to have a transitional place for people to go and recover. So we're in early discussions now, but we are going to be looking for investors. So if there's somebody out there that would want to invest in this, please reach out. And those that can't invest, it'd be really helpful if your audience and your patient base could write you letters, and please pass them us the importance it is to have healthy, healthy housing, but also healthy transitional housing while you're trying to figure things out. The other is what Dr. Ray did for me. He put me in a controlled environment. He didn't tell me why. The reason why he did it is to see how I responded. I started feeling better. And realized I wasn't really sick. It's the world around me. And you build a healthy shell around a person, you can have great health, understanding diet, nutrition, and your environment. So please write in and let us know that you feel there's a need for healthy transitional housing, so we can attract investors.
So the question I thought was blended in, this is kind of, I think I'll summarize it is, so you'd mentioned about barnwood having arsenic. Barnwood also can have mold,
lead, and
a lot of other things. Can you make barnwood safe enough by painting sealers over it?
You can also have methane and other gases from the cattle or the hogs or whatever within a barn,
all kind of
and pesticides and everything else. So, well, back to I caution people, and we'll maybe have a session just on construction dust, the hazards. We killed the mold, but then we harmed ourselves more with the construction, the methods that we killed the mold with. So every material, just like our body and personal care products, same thing with the materials and sealers and products we use in our home, we want them to be safe. We want them not to affect a living built environment. So if you completely seal it, and I don't know if the marine grade sealer off gases high levels of VOCs and other solvents, I don't know. But I have also found it very difficult to seal. You can seal lead and arsenic. You can seal them in. You can, but you just want to make sure what you use to seal them with isn't just as harmful. Absolutely.
Yeah, we do have a family who probably is more sick from the VOCs in their remodeled home after the remediation than the mold that they were in the first place.
Very common problem. Very common problem.
So let's finish it up with this last question, before we kind of wrap things up. Is dehumidifiers, as far as controlling the environment in your home, just about what level this is about any specific brand of dehumidifier, but also just talking about what level of humidity is okay if you're dealing with mold in your home.
Well, we want to. I definitely like the relative humidity level to be below 50%, and as close to 40% as you can get. But that does not mean in the wintertime to increase it to 40%. Yeah, in the wintertime you want to minimally humidify your home, if at all. Because then you remember all the thermodynamics of a home. Moisture will find a cold surface, and you don't want the cold surface to be your walls or your attic, and it certainly will. That's a great question. I don't like the store-bought dehumidifiers in the store. By the way, they will mold on you. There's no filters, so we use more commercial-grade dehumidifiers. We'll offer some on our website, and maybe for your audience, we can give them a little bit of a discount later. But we filter the air that goes into the dehumidifier. You want your dehumidifier to stay clean, and then when we feature your home, we'll show one off. That's a great question, Maureen. You definitely don't buy a trolling motor, though.
So let's wrap things up. I think that's covered. There's going to be some slides that Captain Darren has supplied on our website, Facebook, also, just to kind of give you some pictures and some different learning points from that. But I will just kind of wrap up by saying I am honored to have you here next to me and sharing with my audience just your experience and your knowledge. And again, thank you that you are in an industry standing out against an industry who is trying to build, but you're trying to, as you said, that word mission is what we're about, is having a mission to help people have safe, healthier lives because they're living in safe, healthier homes. And we need more that are doing this and in other areas that overlap.
Website.
Oh, and website. We will put, what is your website, Yellow, if you have that?
Sure.
And we'll put it on the Facebook as well.
Yeah, so we're talking about mission. We realize we have a higher calling than just working locally, so we realize that people follow us now from around the world. And Dr. Lynch wants us to multiply. Yes. And say, how do you reach more people? So we're going to change our main website, which is healthyexposure.com, healthyexposure.com. It's going to stay that way, but it's going to show construction, consulting, inspections, and public speaking. There'll be a product link, and then we'll have a special code for you that will link to a new website that's not public yet. It should be public soon. And I keep saying that, but I promise
you keep telling me that,
it's
so
coming.
I'm waiting. Yeah,
Lexi, if you're out there watching, Lexi, she's a writer and she's going to help us get this thing out. But that's healthyexposureliving.com.
I'm looking forward to that.
Both sites will link to each other.
Yes.
And please follow us on Facebook at Healthy Exposure.
So thanks to everybody that's joined us on Facebook, and I hope that those who watched it and those who will watch it in the coming days and weeks will benefit and will get started on living a healthier, more abundant life that we here at Sanctuary are all about helping you do. So thank you, and I enjoyed it.